Hi everyone, this is Lisa Marie from Artistry by Lisa Marie, and today I am finishing up this printable coloring page. Drew it a little while ago, and I just decided to share with you how I'm coloring it in, and I'm just having so much fun doing this particular image. So I'm super excited you guys could join me as I finish up coloring this lady and the beautiful wave. Starting off with my Ohuhu markers, just like the previous video where I colored her in. To create the underpainting, I often will use my Ohuhu markers. And I like to have the underpainting, so the color pencils that I put on top look very rich. I want nice deep hues in this particular image, especially with the wave. I really wanted to go for some nice deep rich colors to complement her rich skin tones. Speaking of compliments, the wave is visually complementary to the woman because of that circular shape of the wave. See how it's all rounded? It complements the organic curves of the woman herself. So that's just a little behind the scenes for when I was drawing this coloring page. I loved the way they worked together. Coloring it in, the blue in the water is a complementary color actually to the browns and oranges in her skin tone. So a lot of back and forth play visually that I'm kind of going for here. But also there's a bit of opposition or opposites going on. She's more of a realistic image while the water is way more stylized. And this contrasting style works really nicely here. If you'll notice as I'm putting down the markers, the color is being applied with the movement or the lines of the waves that I already drew. So it almost seems like she's this still, calm center, and the wave is crashing around her with all the movement of the lines flowing around her. And I really wanted to enhance that by making sure I applied the color with the lines already drawn. In the previous video, I talked about what inspired the woman, and in this video, I thought I'd talk to you about how the wave was very strongly inspired by the print called The Great Wave of Kanagawa from 1829, so way while back, by the Japanese artist Hokusai. This is a super famous print, and it's used quite frequently through history by many artists because we inspire each other, and that's what we do. One fun note, because the original print was a woodblock print, you can find copies of it in museums all over the world. It's everywhere, super easy to find. But for a long time, art historians didn't view the print as a work of art. They didn't think woodblock prints were works of art. But back to this current coloring page, the composition is super dynamic and there's a lot of movement. So I'm not going to be doing too much with the background. I really wanted the central image to pop off the page. You can see now I'm just doing the caps of those waves, and I'm letting the white of the paper really work with me and help me and kind of show through. I'm not afraid to let the white of the paper be a tool when I'm coloring in an image. And even though the lines are a bit stark, I mean, they're a bit crisp, again, inspired by a wood block, the lines are going to be a bit more crisp. I like to use the colorless blender of the Ohuhu markers to soften it. Even with those blues and with this cool gray, I'm using the colorless blender to soften the lines and the colors that I'm putting down in the underpainting. You can see it there. It's just blending right into that white of the paper. Similar to if you've ever done watercolor painting, a lot of watercolor artists, use the white of the paper to help their colors transition and soften. It's not a problem just to use the white of the paper. A little bit of gentle blending is all you need. I love the way it whooshes around her. Next up is my colored pencils. I like to use Prismacolor pencils when I'm coloring just because they're pretty affordable and they're super easy to get. Very accessible. A lot of people know Prismacolor pencils. So when I'm doing a tutorial, I like to sometimes and quite frequently use materials that I just know a lot of people can have access to. I chose for my core palette, naturally dark, medium, and light blues. You can see them off to the side. And as I always say, grayscale coloring, easy as 1, 2, 3, dark, medium, light. I do have that light green chartreuse, I think it is, off to the side as well. You can see it's pulled up next to the blues. I'm going to add that just to have a little bit of depth to the color, a little visual interest to the color. But really, I'm using mostly the dark, medium, and light blue. And I'm just blending it right over the Ohuhu marker, but I'm still applying my color in the same direction as the lines of the waves. I'm keeping that movement, but you can see now already with the dark, I'm blocking out my shadowy spots and blocking out my darker sections with that darker blue, and it's really helping the white caps of the waves stand out. And I do like to block out my darker areas, block out the shadows. I did that also when I was coloring in the woman in the previous video. I blocked out the shadows first. Then the medium blue, just sort of connecting the dark to the lightest areas. The medium tones are often, in my mind, a bridge. They connect the dark to the light. And I like to blend my colors on paper. So the color you see in the colored pencil, it's not going to be the final color you see in the image because I'm blending my colors together right on the paper. And that's also why I don't press too hard too fast when I color in with pencils, especially. I like to preserve the tooth of the paper so I can keep adding more layers on and blend colors together on the paper. If I press really hard, really fast, then there's not much tooth left. Not much texture left on the paper, and then I can't play as much. I can't do as much with the colors. I do like to use, and you're going to see that when I pull the lighter blue, I like to use my lightest colors of my color palette to blend and do a final blend. Um, a lot of people like to use white or colorless blenders, which is fine. That's a totally different technique and a great look sometimes. But I like to use the colors in the palette that I've chosen when I'm blending. There it is. There you can see the green. And it's kind of interesting. It's subtle green that I'm using. It's not, a rich dark green, but it just adds a nice little bit of depth, a little visual interest to the blues. If I had just gone with straight blues, it would have been very, very striking, but I like that touch of green in the water here. And again, that's just personal preference. A lot of coloring, all of coloring is personal preference. And I just really wanted a bit of green in my water there. Now you can see with that lightest blue for that palette that I've chosen, I'm going over a lot of the sections, all of the blue with it, and it's my final blender when I'm blending the colors together. But that also means I go through a lot of light colors and I'm often resharpening them and ordering individually my lightest colors over and over again just because I use them a lot. And even though the lines in the original drawing were very crisp, you can see how between the underpainting and then the blending the pencils over top, it's softening the whole image a bit more. And the white of the wave caps is, again, mostly white of the paper with some light blue gently blended. But that gentle blending is also softening the whole image. And that's something, again, about technique and personal preference. If you like crisp lines and you want to preserve the original lines in the drawing underneath, you'd have to color a different way. But I was really enjoying the whole softening effect of blending things together. There you can see I do use the white just because white paper, white, really light blue, white caps. Sometimes you just have to pull out your white and get the blending job done. Just remember the links to this coloring page are in the video description, so you can download and print this and color along with me, which would be super fabulous. Also, I'm going to write down all of the colors, the exact colors that I use in the video description, so you don't have to guess. I'll just have everything written down for you. The background is just a touch of warmth to balance the warmth in her skin tone and help that blue stand out. Again, I'm using a dark, medium, and light. So the color concept you can see off to the side there, dark, medium, and light browns and tans and creams. They're going to soften the outer edge of this image, but it's not going to be all over the place. I'm not completely filling the background with color. The wave and the woman are just such powerful images. I really wanted them to pop off the paper and stand out. They're the central focal point. Don't have to do a lot with the background sometimes. There you can see I used the dark. Now here's the medium. And I'm just going right over the dark, blending. And I'm pressing a little bit harder as I'm closer to the edge of the image and as I'm moving away from the image towards the whiter of the paper. Um, I'm lightening up. I'm lifting my hand, the pencil, off of the paper, and that's how I'm getting that really soft transition. And again, it's always easier to go dark slowly or don't go too dark too fast. So don't press down too hard when you're first applying color with pencil. And that gives you a little bit of wiggle room to blend your colors together on paper. And that's super helpful here when the background is just a subtle touch of color. Don't go too dark too fast. And you have more wiggle room for blending, applying different colors. Just sort of using that crescent shape there, letting it sort of happen naturally as I'm creating the background. And that adds to the dynamic shape. You have a circle on one side and then that crescent movement on the other side. Visually, it just makes it more interesting. Love that light cream. I use it quite a bit. If you watch any of my other videos, I really like light cream. I like it for blending. I love the soft warmth of it. I use it a lot. There's my paintbrush. I always have a soft paintbrush with nice soft bristles. I can sweep away any bits of extra pigment um, or anything else that's fallen on the paper so I don't have to swipe my hand over the paper or blow on it. I used to just blow on the paper and try to blow stuff away or swipe it away, and it always messed up. I always thought, I'll be super gentle, I'll be super careful this time, and it never worked. So finally just got the right tool for the job, got a paintbrush. Speaking of tools, next up is my Flymax paint marker. Again, something you'll see me using quite a bit in a lot of my coloring videos. And it kind of steals the show as the top layer of color for this wave. strokes of the white in the body of the wave give it a kind of shiny or glossy look, and I use my finger to dab up the paint so it's more subtle and transparent. Of course, that means part of my finger is going to be white by the end of this coloring, but that's okay. That's life as an artist. Dirty fingers. I wash my hands afterwards. Uh, so there you can see just sweeping along, still moving with the lines, but I'm only going more in the center of the wave, so I get that glossy, shiny look right in the center of the wave. Adding a bit more white, a bit more shine right in the very center. Still a very stylized look, not very realistic, not, you know, it's not realism here. I'm not trying to make it look real. I am just having fun with the movement and the play of the water. Next, I apply dots or stippling, which is actually the same technique that I used to create the underpainting for her hair in the previous video. But instead of the underpainting, now it's the top layer. And stippling works great, either to create texture, which is how I used it to create her hair, or to soften edges. Stippling is a very subtle look, especially with the white caps of the waves. It makes a very subtle transition, softens those edges. Remember, they started as super crisp lines, and now, because of those little white dots, they're going to soften it or make it look kind of hazy. Also, I'm using them to kind of mold the shape of the top of the wave a bit more. You can see there I'm molding that top shape a bit visually with those dots. I like how I also, in this particular coloring, I use 3 different mediums to work together to make the wave. The markers, the pencils, and now the white paint. Just a nice, fun, mixed media approach. They work well together, they blend well together. And it's very soothing, by the way, doing this stippling with the marker. I strongly suggest if you're stressed out, just get this marker and just start making a bunch of dots. It's very calming. Although I find a lot of coloring to be very calming, which is why I do it. And it's also why I don't talk very much when I'm actually coloring, because I go just super silent. I'm pretty much meditating when I color. So I don't know if anyone else does that. Comment, let me know. If do you just go totally silent when you color because you've gone into this almost zen-like state mentally? Uh, please tell me I'm not the only one. And there you can see, I love that bit of contrast right there, the white next to that background. Now I'm also, speaking of the background, stippling right over the background. And this will help smooth the transition visually for the wave. So even though it is a crisp drawing with hard edges, it's all softening. The whole thing is being very softened. And it's a nice transition, that bit of white, stippling that you have in the white caps. Now it's going right over that background. I'm not losing the background. I'm just, the color's already put down, but now it's all kind of visually blending together. And I will add a bit more stippling inside the wave, inside the body of the wave. You'll see that in a moment. But there it is. And that'll give it just a bit of that feel of, the water spray when you see waves crashing up on rocks. And there's many ways to create this look. This is just the one I chose for this particular coloring page. And again, it adds to that sense of movement, dynamic, just sort of shape crashing around this dignified central woman. If you want to know how I did her skin tone and her hair and all that, definitely go check out the previous video. But I am going to go back to her in just a moment And I'm gonna darken her portrait just a little bit. I'll use a little bit more pencil, and I'm also gonna use some Jelly Roll pen. Sometimes it's easier to add the final touches after the rest of the drawing is done, just so I know if the extra touches will work in the final image, and it's easier to add details over the background, obviously, when the background's already done. So there you can see, just it's way easier to just go back sometimes after the rest of the coloring is done, just to see if it will work visually, to push some shadows. Will it work to add some extra details, say in her hair? And because of those blues, the shades of blues in the wave, I just decided, yeah, it would definitely work to go back with some of that darker blue and purple and push the shadows. And that also goes back to how, coloring for me anyway is kind of a cycle or a circle where I'll do something, I go on to something else, and then I go back to working on something. Uh, I worked on her portrait last time, and now I'm just going to go back to it and do the final touches. Her hair has so much texture. It just made sense to finish the rest of the drawing, see how far I wanted to push that background before I finished all of the detail work in the hair, which would be going over any background work that I did. But I thought about it and I just decided I really wanted her to pop right off the white of the paper, so I didn't do too much with that background. And that's it for today. Thank you for visiting the studio. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss the next video. And stay creative. Bye.